please welcome on stage our next keynote speaker, Mr. Paul McCarthy.
Crikey, as we say in Australia. That was quite a speech, Cindy. Some introductory remarks. Firstly, who am I? I'm an author, recently published my first book, Online Gravity. Here's a copy of it. Please feel free to tweet about it, and there's a signed copy for the best question. I'm a technology executive, 20 years experience in Australia. Sydney, Australia is where I'm from. I've worked at IBM as well as a range of tech startups and in financial services technology, and I'm also adjunct professor of computer science at UNSW Australia, which is kind of like the Stanford of Australia. For a decade, I actually haven't worked in the advertising industry, but for a decade I was chairman of Australia's leading advertising awards, the Digital Awards, the AMIA Awards. So I've seen a lot of work in the industry, and to be honest, I love advertising. I think it's one of my greatest interests has been the media sector and advertising throughout my life. This talk is about, I've titled it The New Renaissance, and it refers to a chapter of this book about talent. It's a rather ambitious title, and I just thought, by way of introduction, I might preface what the Renaissance means to me. The term, of course, refers to, quite literally, rebirth, and it refers most often to the European Renaissance around the 16th century, a time of great flourishing in both science and arts, and the coming together and reinvention and re-understanding of a lot of classical knowledge. Da Vinci, I guess, is the epitome of the Renaissance person, being at the intersection of arts and sciences, and a whole range of technologies and activity happened at this time, including Gutenberg's printing press, which was, of course, the precursor for the scientific revolution. It's my view that today's connectivity through the web, smart devices, and data science, machine learning, there are similar opportunities. I believe we're entering a new renaissance. So this talk is about that. It's in three parts. Firstly, I'll talk about what is online gravity. Secondly, I'll talk about what sort of talents and opportunities there are for people with diverse talents in this era. And lastly, some remarks about Digital India. So let me just step away from here. I think I've got a clicker. Okay. Firstly, what is online gravity? Who of you here shops at Reliance Fresh? Hands up in the air. Good, good. How many shop at Food Bazaar? Right, good. And what about more? Okay, so pretty even split there. And what about at these stores? Any hands? Okay, good. So this is to illustrate the point that in the offline world, there's different economics to the online world. This is in car brands, luxury car brands. I understand that the leading luxury car brand in India at the moment is Audi, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and of course the fantastic Jaguar, which we love so much. In cola, we're very familiar with this idea. There are global brands, a leader, challenger, follower, and niche brands. That's a beautiful Scottish drink for our Scottish friends in the audience. All right, damn. In tea, I love tea. I understand that this may be something similar to the market, equilibrium market in India. Tata we hear a lot about. There's a number of brands. There's competition. Now, another question. Which search engine do people use? How many people in this room use Google as their principal search engine? Right, slightly different to supermarkets. Okay, how many people use this one regularly as their main engine? Right, and what about this one? Right, oh good customers over there. And how about these ones? DuckDuckGo and Wolfram Alpha. Oh, they're advanced guys, these guys peak now and then. Online is not like offline. The subtitle of this book, it's actually not mentioned as a subtitle, but the idea behind this book is that there's no Pepsi in cyberspace. It struck me that economics are fundamentally different to online to offline. Instead, there's a gravitational force that forms the you end up with planets and moons with a lot of white space in between. For those of you who don't know the history of our solar system, it started a bit like this. There's current thinking, there's a whole bunch of rocks and a lot of gas spread around, and there's this magic force. There still is this amazing mystical force which can't be shielded against. How cool is that? You can't shield against it. Gravity acts at an infinite distance on all matter in the universe. And it ended up with this. That's why we ended up with this. So one thing about our solar system, 8 big rocks as a result of gravity bringing them together. I think that online, the end game is quite similar. So have a look at the market share of Coke, Pepsi and Dr. Pepper worldwide, or Schweppes. The amazing thing is that the market share hasn't changed. You can drive a truck along these lines over decades, for almost 100 years. Why is this? There's a lot of smart people at these companies, there's a lot of people in the audience who work on brilliant campaigns for these companies, and they haven't been able to move the dial at all, really. Online, we know it's quite different. This was the leading player in the category of social media was Myspace. One of my fellow Australians bought that company, and we all know what happened. Unfortunately for him and his shareholders, it didn't end up being Facebook. It didn't end up being Pepsi, I'm sorry. So Facebook came along and decimated it. So we know in social, there's a planetary leader, Facebook, and they're still going, MySpace is still going, but you wouldn't really call them a challenger brand. In encyclopedias, this is similar. Wikipedia is the planet, and whatever category you think of, the same sort of pattern emerges. Why does this happen? Well, there's a range of reasons. I won't go into it in detail, it's in the book, but basically it's a combination of network benefits, Metcalfe's law. A bigger network is better. Anyone who's sold a house knows that an auction might be a good place to sell with a number of, you don't want one person at the auction, you want a lot of people at the auction, and a telephone system works a lot better with many people on it, of course. But there's also switching costs, so there's downsides to choosing the competitors, both from your side as a user and from the network side. The network becomes less useful. The results of this is we have a solar system in the making, an online solar system in the making. Here I've represented the world's largest online companies to be consistent with this analogy that are the planets in our solar system, taking a cue from Da Vinci's own map of the universe that was on the Pioneer 11 that went out to the aliens. Apple being the largest company in the world, there's 4 American companies and 4 non-American companies. These are $100 billion gravity giants. There's 15 other companies that are called dwarf planets, Flipkart being the largest of those in India. And so now I'm going to talk about talent and in this era of online gravity. I've characterised 3 eras in economics. Firstly, manufacturing. Those guys, I think they're policemen. You can see the black and white photo a century ago. They're learning how to be policemen, where standardised skills was very important. In more recent times, relationships was the key to success, and that shots from Mad Men. Any fans of Mad Men in the audience? Yes. Thought so. And then, but tomorrow I think the key will be talent. There's 3 ways. A very wise friend of mine, Lenny Mayo, who's one of the best investors in the online space in Australia I've ever met, said to me, there's 3 lenses through which you can look at startups. You can look at them in terms of their product, which is also a cultural fit with Google. You can look at it in terms of a market, whatever the product is. If the market's rising, big data at the moment is obviously a rising market, then all boats will float. Or you can look at it in terms of the talent, which I think, in my view, is the most enlightened and appropriate way to look at things, and my understanding is that's consistent with Apple's philosophy. I don't believe, by the way, that any of these are wrong, and it was a great enlightening moment to me to see this, because I'd had many conversations over the years with other technology investors who, quite frustrating conversations, where they said, I want to see the IP, I want to see the patents, it's kind of like, right, okay, and but I think a more enlightened view is to look at the talent. So let's look at today's top employers. One of the amazing things about the web and around data science is that we can learn things and see things from new perspectives like never before. We can see inside companies that we've never been able to see before. Companies like Glassdoor, LinkedIn and Ivy Exec allow us to see this, especially, for example, secretive companies. There's many companies that have been quite secretive, either because they're making lots of money and they don't want people to know, or they don't want their talent poached, or they've got special proprietary IT technologies. Now, because of LinkedIn, any company of over 20 people, it's impossible to hide, basically. You can see inside them. I've done a lot of research, which is in the book, which looks inside some of the leading companies. You can also learn which employees move from which companies to which companies. LinkedIn has one of the most valuable data collections on the planet, without any doubt, because they understand which companies are attracting which talent from which companies, and they've done a ranked listing of the most popular companies in the world, and guess what? They're all gravity giants. So not surprising. So in more detail analysis in the book, I've looked at what makes these companies successful. Today's companies, gravity giants. There's more computer scientists. I guess that's not a surprise. More statisticians and economists. Many of these companies, like Amazon, for example, run like economies, so it's not surprising that economics is in vogue. But this is the rub. There's more artists and designers. There's more immigrants and outsiders. And there's more self-directed learners. Gravity giants have more artists. I worked at IBM for nearly a decade, and I love the company. It's a brilliant company. I was very interested to see, though, that Apple has 7 times the arts graduates employed on its payroll as IBM. And you might say, well, it's a consumer products business, it's a design business. It's fascinating, though, a staggering number of fine arts graduates. You wouldn't credit it. Migrants are the majority of gravity giant founders in the US. Obviously, the web is a US-centric phenomenon at the moment. I think that's going to change. But nevertheless, the founders of gravity giants are invariably immigrants. Gravity giants founders are also curious learners. These companies, all these companies, the founders of each of these companies, Google, Amazon, Wikipedia, and the SimCity franchise, all had one thing in common. They went to Montessori schools. And I'm not a Montessori advocate. My kids haven't gone to Montessori schools. I'm not here to sell Montessori, but I believe that Maria Montessori had some pretty interesting ideas. And one of the things I think she taught was independent thinking. And I think that's very important in these companies. So there's today's top skills, what are needed. Statistics is essential. Data science is the way of the future. Stats is now the #1 undergraduate course at Harvard University. It's seen a 10 times growth in the last 5 years, overtaken economics as the #1 course. We can also see from the talent signatures I talked about earlier that it's not just STEM skills, science, technology, engineering and maths, but also STEAM skills. Science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. And the Chinese, culturally, I think, understand this. This was a survey of parents in the US and China, looking at their different attitudes to what they think will make success for the future for their kids. Maths and computer science big amongst US parents, but knowledge of the world's cultures, much more important for Chinese parents. I think they might be onto something. I call these Jaguar Jobs. When I joined IBM, they made the biggest corporate loss in history. Hopefully it was nothing to do with me, but they also, very sadly in Australia, lost all their Jaguars. All the sales staff used to drive Jaguars and they lost them all because they ended up driving Ford. So they were very unhappy. It was a very unhappy period. And the idea is that in any business where you have to sell a high-value, complex product, you need people to sell it who have the trust of senior executives in that market. And they generally need to drive expensive cars, and they generally went to the private schools with people that make the decisions. So this is what I call the Jaguar Jobs. And these days, there's an opportunity to concentrate sales from a head office in one place and sell enterprise services, high-value services around the world like never before. This chart on the left shows a variety of companies and the headquarters centricity of those companies. LinkedIn and Zynga, you can see 70 or 80%. And I've seen this firsthand in our market. There's a company called Atlassian, which is Australia's largest technology company. It grew from 0 to 250 staff, from 0 to 50 million in revenue in less than 5 years. Not one person in the US, and all the money came from the US. This is the first time that something like this has ever happened in our market. So it's happening around the world. This is about the changing nature of labour and the way in which it's being divided and reunified. In the old school, the madman world, in the 50s and 60s, that wonderful world of advertising, people had what I might call I-shaped skills. So they had very specialist skills. They were either the word people, the copywriters, the picture people, the art directors, the people, that's the suits, I guess, or those that are in planning and media that are good with numbers. These days, I think the biggest opportunity is people with T-shaped skills, or perhaps even pie-shaped skills, like John Lasseter, the founder of Pixar, where they start with one discipline, a disciplinary strength. In John's case, I think he started in traditional animation. He went and then he was an outsider and in an early stage of the development of that sector, and he learned about software. He teamed up with software engineers and learned a lot about software, and they created what's arguably one of the best companies in the world, Pixar, now part of Disney. There's also a rise of portfolio careers, so people acting, singing. There's a great one in Australia. This guy dubs himself the dub dentist, DJ at night and dentist by day. Victor and Spoils, many of you may know, a fantastic crowdsourced ad agency. They have this amazing proposition, client proposition. If you hire any agency on Madison Avenue, you only get 1/8 of the talent worldwide. If you hire Victor and Spoils, you get half the talent working on it at night, on your campaign at night. But the opportunity, I guess, for global passionistas is one of the key things that this Renaissance theme picks up on. And it sort of comes back to, I think, your talk, Cindy, too, is about doing what you love most. The opportunity has never been greater, I believe, with the web to do this. As a young man myself, I've always been interested in fine arts. At one point, I was thinking about being an art critic, and I wanted to, a newspaper art critic at Australia's leading newspaper, the Sydney Morning Herald. Unfortunately, I didn't choose that job because there's only one job and the guy's still there. That was 40 years ago. But these days, rather than just having a job, if you're interested in the arts, you might start a gallery. There's a guy in the US, Carter Cleveland, who was interested in fine arts. His dad was an art historian and he studied computer science. He's created a site called Artsy. If you're at all interested in the arts and you haven't seen it, have a look. It's amazing. It's integrated the whole world of fine art, from the private collection in through to the public museum, and created this incredible resource of contemporary fine art. Duorama, I'll talk about a bit later. So this idea of hybridised roles is another key thing. So my sense is that generalisation, or being able to multitask, is going to be a skill in the future. There's a company many of you will use called WhatsApp, who built basically the equivalent to the world's telephone system, like what Ericsson did over the last century, if you like, with the landline system. Ericsson, with about 100,000 people worldwide and about 100 years, they created all the technology and built basically the telephone system that we all use today. And their company is worth about $36 billion. In less than 5 years, WhatsApp created a network with 500 million people on it, a similar sort of feat to what Ericsson had done. But here's the kicker, not just less than 5 years, they had 55 staff. One of the job descriptions of the first employees was German, Spanish, Android guy. So I think these kind of skills, when you can leverage the network to such a scale, being able to be across a range of things is going to be valuable. Talent as team is important. XYZ combination teams I talk about. Multi-founder teams do much better than single founders. That's a known fact in the Valley. Sibling production teams in Hollywood do better. The Wachowskis, and famously the Weinsteins. Scientific research, this is happening as well. People are hiring whole teams rather than individuals. And the new triumvirate in the valley is the hacker, the hipster, and the hustler. That's the three people you need to start any company these days. So I'm calling this a new renaissance or neo-naissance. There's an idea there about proportional monospace type. That's the Steve Jobs. He studied liberal arts as part of his education, and that's why we have proportional type on computers, thanks to that education. There's some gaming stuff there from MIT Media Lab, dance stuff. There's all these developments, the self-driving car thing that Google are doing, they involve people with multiple skills crossing disciplines. Someone buttonholed me last night and asked specifically about the judiciary. How is online gravity going to help the judiciary in India? And to be honest, I can't answer that directly, but I do know that the idea of something plus usually technology is the way to kind of conquer the new world. This app on the right there with Philips, those of you who haven't seen it, I encourage you to have a look at it. It's a smart tablet iPhone app, iPad app, and it monitors your heart rate and your breath by using the camera on their iPad. It's quite incredible. It's developed in Philips. So that's the intersection of health and computer science. Of course, the wearables revolution with the smart watch, and there's our friends at Pixar. There are a whole range of new industries emerging, knowledge industries, and this graph was used in a report, economic report to the president, and basically it's an undercover look at jobs growth in the US. And again, looking at that LinkedIn graph, you can see which industries are growing and which industries are shrinking. Renewables being the fastest growing. This is a personal friend's business who's always been interested in outdoor. He was a rally driver for a while. He's a computer science researcher. He won an Academy Award for his work in visual effects in the feature film industry. And now he's working on this thing called Duorama, which is a wonderful thing that combines his passion, which is outdoor activity, and it enables you to track your progress. These guys are doing kite, help me out somewhere, that sort of stuff in Switzerland and Japan, and you can follow your track, and absolutely beautiful stuff. Here's some other examples. I mentioned artsy, there's music, sound. House is a juggernaut taking over the world of interiors. Started from passion in interior design, Goodreads, SoundCloud, and so on. Now finally, I'll just conclude with a couple of remarks about Digital India. I'm an outsider and I don't profess to be an expert in this, but I have seen from looking around the world and my research in the book that incomes are accelerating, global GDPs are accelerating. It took the UK over 150 years to double the wealth of its people from 1700 to 1850. It's taken India only 18 years. This is one of the results of online gravity, I believe. You have strong leadership from the top here. Clearly, Prime Minister Modi is setting a world agenda here. I mean, it's incredible and so rare in politicians to have this vision, I feel. You have powerful digital expats. I read this morning that Padma Sri may be one of the candidates for the new Twitter CEO role. You have, and this is crucial, I think, a growing number of what are known as, in the startup world, as unicorns. In other words, early stage private growth companies that may become gravity giants. Flipkart obviously being the largest of those, but in my mind, perhaps the most interesting is Zomato, because they, to me, are the first to be perhaps the first global gravity giant in terms of their expansion offshore. This chart here shows the interaction between individual freelancers on freelancer.com from a PhD student at Stanford, Roy Mill, who kindly shared his work with me for the book. Half the world is now online, and you can leverage this opportunity. So thank you.